What I will say is this book ruined my week. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be a reading wrap-up video, which is why I have a giant stack of books in front of me. In this video, we are going to be talking about the 14 books that I read over the past 3 months. So we are going to be doing a fall reading wrap-up, talking about everything I've read from September all the way to the end of November. Before we get started, my name is Emily, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope maybe you find a good book recommendation in this video, or you find a book that we've both read and enjoyed and we can talk about it. So if you do, please let me know in the comments, or let me know if you think you've read a book that I would also like. Please, I'm always looking for recommendations, even though I have such a big TBR, but that's okay. Let's just get into it. Let's talk about the books I read starting in September. Okay, so the first book that I finished in September was The Ex Vows by Jessica Joyce, and this one was a very easy 5 stars for me. I had just gotten out of a crazy reading slump, which I talked a lot about in my summer reading wrap-up. I really wasn't reading a lot in August, so when I picked this one up, this one just felt like a breath of fresh air, and I was so excited to be excited about reading again. I actually ended up tabbing some of the quotes in this book, and I'll share some of my favorite quotes that I did end up annotating. I hadn't ever really felt the need to reach for annotation supplies just picking up a random book. Like, I was reading things in here that just really resonated with me. So for example, one of the quotes here towards the beginning, so she's talking about her friendships with other people in her life, and she says, "She's so tied up these days, and I tend to be a mirror anyway. Whatever time someone has to give me is what I give back in an attempt to be unobtrusive. I still send her the most important bits of my life, but dyeing my hair 2 shades darker doesn't seem rank." And I just feel like the way that she explained how she feels like she's a mirror really resonated with me, because I feel like that's something that I kind of feel about myself sometimes. There's another one here as well that says, "I grew more careful with my closest friendships. I'd learned from Heather and Maya, where I'd been too eager, too needy for their time and attention. I tempered myself, never asked for too much, made sure I gave more than I took." And I just felt like as I was going through this, I saw a lot of myself in the female main character. Let me actually tell you what this book is about. This is about a woman named Georgia. Georgia's helping to plan her friend Adam's wedding because Adam is getting married in a few weeks and everything is going completely wrong. So Adam enlists the help of Georgia to help finalize the planning before his wedding. And then their other best friend, Eli, is Georgia's ex. So they had a relationship when they were in college. It didn't work out. So this is a second chance romance between Eli and Georgia. And second chance romances are iffy for me. So this one was a pleasant surprise because I loved every second of it. As I mentioned, Georgia and Eli are supposed to be helping Adam plan his wedding, and I was planning a wedding myself at this time, and I think Adam asking Eli and Georgia to help plan this wedding is a huge ask, even if you are best friends. But putting that aside, and just the fact that it was kind of like a ridiculous premise to begin with, I loved this book, and I just loved Eli and Georgia's relationship. I loved the setting. It takes place in Napa Valley, so that's just a really nice backdrop for this story to take place, and it actually made me cry at the end. So I was pleasantly surprised by this romance book. It's a second chance romance, like I said, and I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for a contemporary romance that has like a little bit more emotion, but also has like some funny moments and things like that. And then the next book I read was actually a novella on Kindle Unlimited, and it was volume 1 of the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. So I read the first one and the second one, so I'll talk about them both at the same time. These are a series of journal-like novellas that follow our main character named Emma. Emma M. Lyon lives in Victorian London in 1883, and she moves into this quirky house that she has inherited from one of her family members, and there's also another like quirky family member living there as well. The novellas are very slice of life. It kind of just goes through Emma's day-to-day life living in Victorian London with all of these other quirky side characters, and Emma herself is just really fun to read from her point of view. But it feels like you're kind of reading a fantasy book without actually reading a fantasy book. There's just something that's inherently like whimsical and magical about Emma's journals. It really feels like she's one of like your close friends and you are reading her diary. I feel like these books are like girlhood in its finest, and it kind of takes me back to reading books when I was younger and just kind of being invested in a story like this. So like I said, great setting, Victorian London in 1883. Great quirky characters, they're really cute, their relationships are really cute, and I'm really excited to see where her story progresses from here. As I mentioned, I read the first 2 volumes, but there's 8 volumes, I think, and I'm saving the rest of the volumes for a time when I'm really just not sure what to pick up and not sure what I'm in the mood to read, because I feel like these are the types of books that you can read whenever and be invested in them. And I also feel like they're good if you are trying to reach your reading goal, because they're very short and quick and easy to read, but they are really engaging, and I really enjoyed both of them that I read. The next book I read in September was Babel by R.F. Kuang, and this was a book that was so impressive to me when I was reading it. I was honestly just like in awe of the intricacies of this book and the world that R.F. Kuang created on top of a world that already exists. So basically this book is set in an alternate version of 1800s London. The magic system in this book relies on silver bars that are powered by translation and the meaning that is lost when words are translated between languages. So these silver bars can be used to make ships go faster or cars go faster or buildings more safe or things like that. So this is a very interesting concept with the meaning of words that is lost in translation. Oxford is the best university for studying this translation art and magic. But basically what we're following in this book is our male main character who is taken from his homeland as a child and brought to Oxford to study this translation art, and kind of how he grapples with the events of history and this story. And I just was really impressed by this one. I enjoyed it. I listened to the audiobook for a lot of this one, and I did enjoy the audiobook, so this is definitely one I would recommend. I feel like this was a really unique book, and I haven't read a book that's similar to it before, so if you have any recommendations for books that are similar to this, let me know. All right, and then the next book I read was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I actually read this while I was on my mini moon in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I felt like it was the perfect setting to read this book, and I wanted to read this before the movie comes out later next year. So that's why I ended up picking this one up. This was the only Emily Henry book that I hadn't read before, and this is also a second chance romance. So September was big on the second chance romances for me with the Ex Vows and this one. In this one, we follow 2 friends who take a trip every single year together. They kind of dance around the fact that they have feelings for each other. They do something that kind of blows up their friendship. They haven't spoken in a while, and this is like their last-ditch effort to try and see if something will work out, whether it's a friendship or a relationship. This definitely wasn't my favorite Emily Henry book, but I did still enjoy it. I think out of all of her books, this might actually be my least favorite for some reason. I don't really have like a good reason for that other than the fact that I just enjoyed her other books more. I would recommend reading it on vacation because they talk about a lot of vacations that she took, and she does work for like a travel magazine and she has a travel blog, so she talks about traveling and trips a lot. So reading it while you are either like planning a trip or on vacation, I feel like is a good setting to read this book in. All right, and then a total pivot from People We Meet on Vacation. I then read Alchemised by SenLinYu. I don't even really know how to talk about this one or describe it or rate it. I actually don't think I gave this book a rating on Goodreads. What I will say is this book ruined my week. And what I mean by that is I was staying up till 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., trying to finish this book because I just really needed to know what was happening and what the resolution was going to be and how this was going to end. So it completely ruined my week because for like 3 or 4 nights that week, I was staying up so late trying to finish this. It was all I was thinking about during the workday because I really just wanted to pick this up and keep reading it. But the story really was a tough story to read. It wasn't enjoyable. I feel like I can't say that this is such a good book, it's so good, it's amazing, because I feel like those aren't the right words to describe this story. What I will say is it was, in my opinion, written well. I feel like I was really invested in the characters and the story, so like in that sense it was good, but I just feel like this is such a hard book to talk about and rate and read. If you are planning on reading this one or you're curious about it, I would definitely check the trigger warnings before you read it. I feel like this book definitely isn't for everyone, so just know that going into it if you are going to pick it up. I will say I personally was invested in the story and I wanted to know where it was going and how it was going to be resolved, but I wouldn't say like this is my favorite book ever, I love it. Like it just doesn't feel like the right words to use to talk about this book. I don't know. That's Alchemised by SenLinYu. So I'm going to definitely remember this book for a very long time. It's definitely going to stick with me. And then the other book that I read towards the beginning of October, I was kind of reading while I was reading Alchemised, and that was If It Makes You Happy by Olivia. And one of my friends actually bought this one for me, and we did a buddy read together. A complete 180 from Alchemised. This is just a warm and fuzzy and cozy fall-coated romance. It takes place in the fall of 1997, and we follow a character who moves to this small town in rural Vermont to run her late mother's bed and breakfast. She ends up striking up a friendship with the baker who lives next door to the inn that she is running, and from there their relationship develops. He is a single dad, she is a workaholic, so it's kind of like classic Hallmark movie vibes. And this book really just felt like one big warm hug, which I really enjoyed. I also loved the epilogue. I hadn't really read an epilogue that was like this book before. I just felt like it was really well done and it was really sweet and cute. So I really enjoyed the epilogue. It was from a different point of view than the rest of the story was, which I liked. Oh, and speaking of point of view, this one is a dual point of view between our male main character Cliff and our female main character Michelle. So if you like dual point of view books, if you like single dad romances, that kind of stuff, this one would definitely be a good book to read. While the cover is like insanely fall themed, it does go into Christmas and New Year's, so you could definitely still read this in December if you wanted a seasonal read. Just know that it starts in the fall of 1997. The next book I read in October was The Academy by Hilderbrand, and I actually listened to this one on audio because I was trying to get it from my library and the hold was super long, so I was like, oh, I can just listen to this one on audio. And I am glad that I did because I really like the narrator that voices Elin Hilderbrand's books usually. What this one is about is a boarding school in upstate Vermont that is full of kids like with rich people problems. It reminded me of Gossip Girl a lot, but with a larger cast of characters. We are following the teachers, we're following the students, we're following the headmaster, and we're kind of just seeing the day-to-day of life at this boarding school. And if you've never read a novel by Elin Hilderbrand before, just know going into it that she writes in a way where it seems like very cut and dry. She's kind of just like telling you all of these things that are happening from multiple points of view, but I just really like how her stories kind of come together and weave together. I don't think her writing style is for everybody. And also, I didn't mention, she wrote this one in partnership with her daughter. Her daughter kind of took her knowledge from going to boarding school and used it in this book. So they wrote the book together, which I feel like is pretty cute. And this is her first book that doesn't take place on Nantucket, or it's one of her only books that doesn't take place on Nantucket or like a beach setting. So it was different for her, and I enjoyed reading a book by this author that is a little different than the normal books that she writes. So that was The Academy. And then the next two books that I read, I actually didn't enjoy too much. So the first one was The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark, and I really had wanted to read a thriller book that would just kind of like suck me in and I'd want to read it in one or two sittings, and unfortunately this one was not that book. One of the positive things I can say for it is I did like the messages of like female empowerment in this book, but the story just didn't engage me at all. I feel like the main character made choices and her inner monologue was just like things that I would never do or say. I just feel like the story wasn't interesting at all. It wasn't really thriller-ish to me. I really didn't enjoy it. I think I gave it 2 stars. I don't know if I would read another thriller by this author because I enjoy thrillers that are a little bit more fast-paced, and this one was pretty slow. And I also just haven't been reading thrillers a lot in general, so that could also have contributed to why I didn't enjoy this one a lot. This one will probably be one that I end up unhauling just because I feel like I don't need it on my shelf, even though the sprayed edges are so pretty. And then in the same week that I read this, I also read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And I am so upset that I wasn't completely obsessed with this one because this is a longer series, and I felt like this was going to be a series that I could just kind of like dive into and be completely invested in and have something to read for like the next few weeks. But I found myself not really super interested in this story. And I said this in the reading vlog when I read this. Knowing my reading taste, I would have thought I would have ate this up. Like, this has everything I want and more in a fantasy sci-fi book, but something about it just wasn't keeping me engaged and it wasn't really working for me. One of the things I will say is that I was struggling to picture the worlds that the author was describing, and some of the dialogue felt a little like disjointed to me, so that might be why I wasn't fully invested in this story. I'm honestly not sure if I'm going to pick up the second book in this series, but I might give it another try, like maybe early next year. I think I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I can see what he was doing, and I can see why people like this book and books by this author, but for me, it either was like wrong book, wrong time, or maybe this series just isn't for me, and that's okay. But I'm curious to know if anybody else read this book and what their thoughts were on it. So if you did, let me know. And let me know if I should pick up the second book in this trilogy and continue on with this series, because I feel like I need a little bit of a push in order to read the second book. And with that, that just about wraps up October. So on to November. The first book I read was Direbound by Sable Sorensen, and I picked this one up because after I had read Red Rising, I felt like I really just needed like a fun, light romantasy. So this one is on Kindle Unlimited if you are interested in it, but this is basically like everything you would want in a fun romantasy book. Our female main character who's like strong and sassy, and she's able to bond with this direwolf, and they have to learn how to work together. We have a trials aspect to this. We have like hidden royalty. We have a dark-haired, broody male main character who is one of her trainers. So if you are looking for something that kind of scratches that itch of the feeling you had when you read ACOTAR or other books like that, this one definitely hits that sweet spot. Also, like Fourth Wing too, like it's very similar in a lot of its plot devices to Fourth Wing, with like the bonding to the direwolf, which is kind of similar to bonding to the dragons in Fourth Wing. So this one is just kind of fun. It is on Kindle Unlimited, like I said, so it's easy to have access to if you do have Kindle Unlimited. The second book is coming out early in 2026, so you don't have to wait too long for the sequel either. And the ending was actually kind of shocking. It was a pretty good twist, and I thought I kind of had things figured out. I would recommend Direbound if you're looking for just like a classic, fun romantasy book. And then the last few books I read in November were all in anticipation of the Brimstone release. Started with a Quicksilver reread. I actually did some annotating because I posted a whole Quicksilver recap video because I love this book so much. So I'm not going to keep talking about this book and keep harping on it. Just know that I absolutely love this book, and I loved the reread that I did. The audiobook is so good. I just absolutely love Quicksilver. And then in addition to rereading Quicksilver, I also did a reread of the bonus chapters from Kingfisher's point of view. And those are pretty important to just have that background knowledge before you go into Brimstone, but they're not completely necessary to read before you read Brimstone. So I did count my reread of the bonus chapters as a book that I read, because we have to do everything we can to get to that 2025 reading goal. And that brings me to Brimstone. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I ended up giving this 5 stars because I love this world and I love the characters. That's why I'm willing to overlook a few things and still give this 5 stars. However, I don't think this one completely lived up to Quicksilver in my opinion, and there's a few reasons why. I'll just speak generally, so there's no spoilers here, but I feel like the main reason why this isn't 5 or wouldn't be 5 stars to me if I didn't already have like such an attachment to Quicksilver is that there was a lot of plot points that I felt like were brought up and then like they weren't super important for the rest of this book, and like they may be resolved in book 3, but some of them felt like they were just brought up and then never brought up again. I also feel like there were a few things that happened in this book that were like a convenient writing device because we didn't know how to get out of the situation. I think if you've read this, you might know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I just feel like there was a few scenarios in this book that were like very convenient, and I felt like there was another way that we could have like either resolved that situation or gotten out of that situation. And I was a little surprised at how some of the things were handled in this book. I felt like there was a few things with some of our side characters that didn't fully get fleshed out. Like I feel like some of the things with our side characters would have been explored a little bit more in Brimstone, and they really weren't. And then I also caught a few editing mistakes, and I feel like this one actually needed a little bit more editing, and I was surprised when I came across them. And then I ended up seeing a few other reviews on Goodreads of people who also caught some of those editing mistakes. So I just feel like that is kind of interesting for such a highly anticipated book that there were some mistakes like that left in this book. Overall with this one, I still love this world. I still absolutely love our main characters, and I will certainly be reading the 3rd book in this series, but this one just didn't fully live up to my expectations. I did still enjoy it, and because I have such an attachment, I did still give it 5 stars. And it wasn't a bad book by any means. There were just a few things in it that I found interesting, and I just felt like they were going to be handled differently. Hopefully some of these things get resolved in book 3 when that releases next year. Let me know if you agree or if you have any other thoughts on Brimstone if you've read it. I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts on this. All right, and like I said, there's currently a few days left before the end of November, but I don't think I'm going to have time to finish any other books before then, so we are going to leave it there. Those were the 14 books I read throughout this fall. I feel like I had some highs and lows over the past few months of reading. I feel like my favorite books from the past few months were probably the Ex Vows, the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, and my Quicksilver reread. If you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, please let me know your thoughts on them. Like I said, if you have any recommendations for me, let me know. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, please do all those classic YouTube things like comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.